news notification. Where
Right.
can I find it?
So you will find it in the overview, and I'll take us through there, and we can start in a minute. Edelyn, it's in the overview on Unit 9. There is a write-up, so I'll show you where that is. I haven't put it into coursework for grade yet because it's going to be due after Thanksgiving. But I'll start putting in an assignment, like a category for the assignment. It's not your final draft, and we'll talk about how to develop a concept today, and how to, complete a project using the materials that you have at home, because it really doesn't matter what the material is. It matters how you use it, how you manipulate it, and what you want to say with the work, right? Because now it's up to you to put out the artwork that want response to. At the end of the last day of class is going to be, you will all be presenting your project. So for the final, it's going to be, you're going to either submit, you can photograph the project, you can video the project, and then you will discuss and talk about the project, and we'll fine tune it. That's why this is going to be a first draft. I will give you feedback on the first draft. It won't be graded, and then you will resubmit the project for a final. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
So we will, but we will still continue to go through Roman art. We're going to go through Islamic art. We're going to go just to hit on key art moments, just like we started with the Egyptians, right? The key art cultures that have influenced our own art.
Okay.
Okay. Edelyn, how are you? Are you at work? And can you hear me? Maybe she's stepped out for a second. Any other questions that you had? I know that there was a quiz on the last Roman PowerPoint that we saw. So just make sure, or else you're going to, if you watch the video and read up on the pages for Rome 1, and then you're ready to take the next quiz. They're just these.
Okay. Okay. You have
to,
already given us a quiz on Rome.
We just had the quiz on Rome. I think you have the whole week to do it, but you were ready to do it after the PowerPoint from Monday. So just when the PowerPoint that we're looking at today is not going to be on the quiz. So when you're studying, go back to that video, review those slides, and then you're ready for the third quiz that we're taking.
Okay.
We already have. I'm sorry, it's due on the 20th. So I think it's due at the end of the week.
28th?
20, yeah. It should be. Let's go together to my RCC so that we are all on the same page. So when you go to my RCC, you'll get the overview of Unit 9. And the first draft for instructions are over here. When you look at the bottom, past the PowerPoints and the article here, you see first draft instructions. So you can open that up, and that will bring you the options. You have two options. You can either do an academic paper, just like this is more standard and more traditional. You could write about 2 pieces of artwork. Let me show you where that is. So for the paper, a traditional academic paper, it's right here towards the bottom. You will go to a museum online, and this gives you the link because all of these museums are now online, and you can go visit the different museums throughout the world. So if you're interested in a particular museum, you can certainly visit it online. And then you're going to compare and contrast 2 pieces of work, just like we have been doing at the very end of our classes in the slideshows. And there's an example again today. And it's pretty structured. It tells you how to set up your paper. You write an introduction, a description, a comparison, and then a conclusion, okay? So you can follow this guideline, especially to create your first draft. If you choose to, instead of the paper, you could also do an art project, right? You can do it out of any material. It has to have a strong concept or a strong idea based on who you are, your perspective, your point of view, and whatever you want to say with your artwork. Then you write down the concept and list the amount of the materials that you have around the house that you can create artwork with. If you go dig up dirt from the back of the yard, it's valid. So it could be out of any materials, and we'll talk about how to collect the materials. If there's something that you need to buy, I can see if RCC can purchase some materials. So write down the materials, and then you're going to insert into the first draft 2 to 3 pieces of artwork that have informed the work. So if you were, you could do it from identify slide from the initial project or PowerPoint that you had presented. You can put inspiration from those ideas, but you can also think about all the cultures we've seen and put a couple of images of inspiration that have informed the idea, that have somehow added to the meaning of your art piece. Okay, you're not doing both of these, you're just doing one. So you choose if you want to do a paper or if you want to do an art project. Okay, and we'll discuss it again a little bit further in depth as the class goes on today. And then we're going to also check out the Rome, where we have 2 more PowerPoints. We're going to do Rome 2 today, and we're going to do Rome 3 on Monday before the holidays. The pages for the textbook for reading, for the preparation for the quiz, all you have to read is page 116 to 129. If you want to on your own focus, and if you're interested in Roman art, you can certainly read chapters 14 and 15 as well, but they're not required. So for the quiz, just read this, and the quiz is due, let me just check in the grade book, or sorry, the coursework, sorry. In the coursework at the bottom, it's not in yet. You'll have at least till the weekend to do it, okay? So for now, just make sure that the Greek art quiz 2 is in, okay? Because that was due on Wednesday last week. But this one for the Rome, you will have at least till Friday, maybe if you need extra time. Oh, let's take a vote. How many folks?
I think it's 23. I saw 11:23 there.
Okay, all right, then it'll be by
When
Monday.
is 23? Is
Monday.
it Monday?
Monday. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that sounds reasonable. You'll have the weekend. It won't take long. It's about a 20-minute quiz. Okay?
Okay.
All right, folks. Georgina, are you doing okay?
Yes, Professor.
Good. Good to hear. Okay. So we're
I
going to
email you. Did you get it?
I haven't checked email today. Is it urgent?
No, on Monday. My son had a surgery, so I emailed you.
Your baby had a surgery?
Yes, on Monday.
Is he doing okay?
Yes, it's fine.
Good. So much stress, huh, with little ones.
I know.
But they're incredible. They have incredible bodies. They're incredible. The body really is so powerful. But I'm glad.
Just take care, man.
That's a lot of stress.
It's not easy. Yeah, it's not easy to be a nursing mother and still
last
doing
week
schooling.
and this week has been very tough for me.
Have you gotten any sleep?
Yeah, we try. We try.
Take it easy and take a lot of rest. Okay, for all of you, especially now during this time, right? You need to. So we'll talk and discuss about what the final project can be in relation to rest, because there's also validity. In order to create artwork and to be creative, you need to have leisure. You need to have actually time away from your habitual way of doing things. And giving yourself that time is very, very important. But the baby's going to be fine. The surgery went well. Everything was okay. Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to go into Rome 2 now. We're going to, and this is just for your pleasure. This is we're viewing these slides so that just to get information. We're also going to talk about, again, how adding color to architecture or to a sculpture, what that does to a form, you know, how it makes it and creates it and makes it alive, right? We have this history that has been written from one point of view, and it is a false history. It's almost like looking at the bones of an animal and trying to think that those bones were the only thing real. Of course, when you add color to the sculpture, it becomes so much more than the stark form that the sculpture takes. Painting and sculpture were intertwined. They were the same thing. So the form would have been created, sculptors would have created the form, they polished the surface, and then layers and layers of paint would be added on to add the color and the vibrancy, which would make the color, the sculpture come alive. So when you're thinking about walking through ancient Rome or ancient Greece or ancient Egypt, you would have seen the sculptures that were so close to life. You had people walking around, and then you would have these statues that would also be represented in lifelike form. So there would be kind of this illusion of reality, a dual reality, right? The actual reality that you were seeing, and then the design and the drawn and the creative reality that was around in the architecture and sculpture. So let's have a look. We're looking into Rome during the imperial period. So we're talking again about a vast empire. We're in the Common Era, 117 in our current counting time. And again, that time is fluctuating. That time is not a static kind of time. We know that 0 is not when human beings began, right? We're in the year 2020, but really it's something like 60,000, 60 and 20, 2000. So, so this idea of counting at 0 and the fact that we're in year 2020 is it's relative. It's not a standard linear way of discussing history. You have Imperial Rome here. It is covering 3 continents. It's covering the north of Africa. It's covering well into the Middle East over here, almost going into Asia. And you have certainly northern part of Europe. And so you're thinking about the people in Imperial Rome would have had a certain, it's not like a country, but they would certainly know of each other, that they would do trade with one another, and they would be not one people, but they would be joined within this empire. And there was no difference between a Roman from the north of Africa, or a Roman from Asia, or a Roman from Europe. It was one and the same, which I think is important to understand, where these divisions in terms of race would have come in much later. That wouldn't be the case in Imperial Rome. Of course, the Imperial Rome was also ruled by an emperor instead of being elected. So there's of course that kind of structure of power which is in place. But let's have a look. So the emperors would often in Rome also put up public spaces, which you're talking about here is an example of a forum that Emperor Trajan constructed in 112 Common Era. And you have him making a huge space, a Basilica Ulpia. Basilicas were used as for law, where laws were granted, where you would go, and it would also be a public space. You would have a garden, you have columns around, you would have a marketplace, similar to a mall today, right? And if you're thinking about Romans themselves were not living in the greatest conditions, and to be able to come to a beautiful space that's open to the public, that you can go visit, you can go into the gardens, you can go have lunch. There were libraries that they had next to the Basilica Ulpia, the forum over here. You could go to the library. There would be sculptures all throughout. So it would be a lovely kind of space for the public, which was important because Romans not only conquered other lands, but they also built bridges, they built roads, they built, so part of the conquering of the lands was also that they built some infrastructure. So soldiers were used to build buildings or restore buildings and to restore bridges and things like that. So there was that part of the power of the emperor to construct public spaces for to show off first his wealth, but also to show off what he could create. Okay. So this is the ruins from Basilica Ulpia. You have these columns of marble that are now not like the Greeks that are fluted from various slabs of marble, but you have solid marble that is coming in from various parts of the empire. You have, they're one solid, they're different colors, they're greens, they're red, and they again would have been transported across the Mediterranean into Rome. So really that connection across the sea, where trade was definitely happening, is clear. In the center of the forum that we looked at, the Trajan's forums over here, so right here in the center, in between the two libraries, there was the Trajan column. And this column was interesting because it was one column that was going up It was, I'm not sure if it was 50 feet tall, but it has 23 stories of how Trajan has helped, how he has conquered various lands, and the stories of building and the infrastructure. And the whole, you could actually walk inside the column. So it's a hollow column. So these are marbles that are cut, stacked, carved on the outside, and they're relatively hollow. And then they have 23 stories of the story of Trajan decorated on top. You would have been able to see these. They're relatively small. Here's a detail. But you would be able to see them, the ones that are higher up. When you went into the library that was adjacent to the column, you would see into and see these stories of the Trajan that perpetuated how Trajan was a helpful emperor. Here, the Roman soldiers are crossing. This is a representation of the river Danube in Middle Europe. This old man is seen as a personification of the river. And here they are, the Romans building a bridge across the river. You can see the ships over here. But the way and the detail that this is sculpted with is pretty extraordinary. You have, obviously, what was important to the Romans would be the sort of military, but you also have the human form that kind of repeats itself. And then again, the story. And you can see that the military would also be building. These buildings are over here carved into the Trajan column as well. So here we have, again, the Romans coming in, there's certainly other scenes of war and conquest, but over here, the Romans are helping to build whatever city over here. You can see them over here getting the tools and the material and building out of brick, and you have the building behind them. Here you have someone, the central figure may be Emperor Trajan himself. He's depicted in over 48 times in this round story that continues up and up. So this really shows the amount of detail on the work and propaganda about how Emperor Trajan was both helpful to the Roman people. It would also, of course, if we are thinking about color, possibly, because this has been outside, the surface area, if it was in paint and if it was in color, would have deteriorated over time. So we have what looks like a shell, but again, there's no clear idea if this was in fact painted with different bright colors that you could see these stories from very far away. When you look at the Trajan column, you can see the stories at the bottom, but it's hard to see the ones at the top. If they had been painted in bright colors, that would, of course, bring us visually closer to the sculptures themselves. The Romans also had this incredible way of building architecture because of the invention of cement. So you have here with the Pantheon, what looks like you're entering into a Greek temple. So the front of it is very similar to the Parthenon. You have the columns, but again, notice that the columns are now one solid chunk of marble. They're not cut into drums. And then you have, again, the pediment. However, behind that is this round structure. So Romans could have started to sculpt their space in the way that they wanted. But here you can see, at the top, it still had Corinthian columns that were leftover aesthetic from the Greeks. The Pantheon is an interesting structure in how geometry has formed this idea of the divine. You have the porch over here that was similar to the Greeks, the front entrance. However, when you entered, you have this vast space, this circular space. And actually, when you look at the Pantheon, there would have been a perfect circle that would fit into this architecture. So mathematically, the equation, so the Pantheon is the same size wide, I believe it's 50 feet, and then 50 feet tall, right? So you have 50 feet across, 50 feet tall, and a perfect circle in the center of this architecture. The reason that they could do this to support such a huge dome at the top is you have this barrel vault that's going around the entire base of the dome, and then you have the dome that distributes the weight of the ceiling. When you walk into the Pantheon, it really is luxurious with the various marbles that have come from various parts of the world. So you have this yellow ochre marble, you have red marble, you have green marble. So this would have all come from different parts of the Roman Empire. You also would have sculptures in between in this portico, as well as the columns that are supporting the dome. The interesting part about the dome is that it's made out of coffers. Coffers are these sculpted elements that are cut into the material. So when you're imagining this heavy, heavy dome, in order to take out a little bit of the weight, you can cut out, and they cut out these coffers that you can see here in every layer, so that you can in fact have less material and less weight. So it served not only a decorative purpose, because it's quite stunning how this, when the sun, there's a central oculus here at the top, and it actually is empty. There's no glass in it, and it is there so that it can follow the sun. So when the sun shines, you see exactly what part of day it is. So again, it's this connection. This specifically the Pantheon is a connection to the heavenly realms, to the sky, to the sun. You can watch the sun as it goes across the sky through this oculus over here. And again, the shade on all of these coffers would respond in direction to the light that's coming into the building. And that would be the only way that light was in fact getting in. And when it rains, it actually rains into the building. So emperors were regarded during the empire, were there to achieve conquest and to go and achieve more territory or conquer more territory. And one of those emperors, and then they would come back to Rome and tell their stories through artwork. This is an equestrian sculpture of Marcus Aurelius. Most of the emperors would have a sculpture on a horse in this way. The sculpture is about 2 or 3 times the size of an actual human, so it's larger than life. But have a look at how the sculptors knew the forms of the bodies, right? You have the bodies in mathematical proportions. You have the drapery that's covering the body. You also have this naturalistic way of representing the animal, the horse. I mean, to see the curves over here across the neck of the horse, and the musculature is quite extraordinary. It's rare to find bronzes that are that haven't been melted down. And one idea is that during Christianity, during the Crusades, they actually thought that this was an apostle and not the emperor. Otherwise, they would have recycled the material. Oftentimes, the bronze sculptures would have been melted down and reused for a different purpose. For example, building weapons. And then, when during peacetime, they would get again melted down and poured into sculptures. So you have this kind of sense of power because the emperor is at least 2 to 3 times size of a human being, really standing on top on the horse. You have him reaching out, talking to the people, perhaps going in a parade, and he's holding the reins of the horse over here with his left hand in a way to control this powerful animal, but really easily, looking like he's very much in control, right? Which would be something that's the kind of persona that you want to portray, is this emperor of the people, and one who can also sort of tame nature in a way. And this is a housing complex, which is how the Roman people would have been living. You would have the wealthiest patrons at the bottom, who would also possibly have stores at the bottom floor. So it's a similar idea and concept to our apartment buildings, but instead of having penthouses and the wealthy folks on top, you would have the wealthy living at the bottom, and it would economically get progressively where the poor would be living at the top, and the top would be built out of less expensive materials. So for example, something like wood. And oftentimes there would be fires in Rome. So unfortunately, the top layers would be the most that would be in danger. So you have that kind of structure, but it was similar to what apartment buildings, the first idea of apartment buildings and living within a city system and a city structure would have been started in Rome. And you can see the leftover brick and the living quarters over here on the right-hand side. And this is a replica that was recreated. What was interesting about Romans was that this is a funerary relief of a freed slave who is a wool processor at this point. They would cremate the dead. They would not. They were so afraid of, but they would do that outside of the city walls because of the fear of fire within the city. So outside there would be catacombs where you would bury the ashes of the dead, and then there would be tombstones. And for example, this tells us that this was a funeral relief of a freed slave. What I find interesting about that is that in some parts of the U.S., we still don't have tombstones that have marked people that have died during slavery. So it's one of those things where actually freed slaves would become citizens of the empire. All right. Here's a comparison between two rulers. You have Marcus Aurelius on here on the left, and a Victorius Stele of Naram-Sin here on the right. There's at least a 2,000-year difference, but have a look at the idea of power. Here, we didn't look at the Stele, but it's of Naram-Sin from Mesopotamia. He's climbing, he's carved out of rock, he's climbing and has conquered people, and actually underneath, if you look underneath his feet, you will see the dead. Yeah, go ahead, Georgina.
Yeah, I only see a building. I don't see if you are showing the slides. I only see 3 buildings. Yes, okay. Thank you.
Can you see it now? Did you see it now?
I get it now too.
Did you not see it before?
No.
Tell me earlier. All right, let's go through these.
We only see the buildings.
So everybody was at the same page.
Can you see it now? Here.
Now we saw it.
Now it's
Yes.
moving? Okay.
Yes.
So this is the territory of Imperial Rome. This is the Basilica construction. So did it freeze maybe? Thanks for letting me know. So this is the Basilica, and the setup of Emperor Trajan. That was the public forum that he would build public spaces like the market over here. So there would be a lot more possibility for the public to go out and enjoy themselves outside of being at home and living pretty much.
What we are seeing right now is somebody on a horse, and
yeah, it's a comparison. It's
different from Vatican that you are talking about.
I have no idea why it's lagging.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. What do you see now?
the Apollo doors.
We can see the plan.
Okay, the plan, perfect, okay. See it now?
Yeah, you see the plan.
Okay, so that's the plan that the emperor would have had for public spaces, and did you see this slide before?
No.
Okay, so this is this would be the marble that was imported from various parts of the empire. Again, trade would have been huge in the Roman Empire. I'm so sorry that somehow the slideshow didn't work. Let's go through it quickly. Did you see the Trajan column?
No.
Okay, so here's the column. Now that we've heard about it, here's the column. It would have 23 stories of the emperor carved, if the various stories going up. On either side of this would have been a library, and you could go see the stories. Again, the emperor tried to project his story as much as possible so that he would be remembered and known as a good emperor. And here's the detail of how the column was carved with those stories across. Here's a personification of the river, where the Romans built bridges across various rivers to build infrastructure as well as housing. And here you see them actually building the buildings over here on the right. I'm so sorry that you didn't see the slideshow. Obviously the column could have possibly been painted just like any sculpture that would have been painted during the Roman and the Greek times. And that would again bring a layer of vividness that you could see it from far away. It would be shimmering, it would be shining, there would be color on it, and that would portray the as close to reality as possible. The next structure that we talked about was the Pantheon, which would have been built in the style of the Greeks. And
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I overheard you say Basilican or something like that.
Yes,
Is
Basilica.
it the same with the Vatican of Pope, where they established in Rome?
So Basilica initially was a building for law, and then during Christianity, Constantine made it into a church. So initially, it was where the lawyers would and the judges would give their judgments, which would be interesting
Okay.
because then in the center where the judges were, you only switched. The Romans already knew that kind of structure and that kind of power, and then it would switch to the priest being inside the basilica, and then preaching to the followers. After Rome became Christian, which would have been in 350 after the common. So after this period, we're still so the Romans are still have multiple gods, and they are practicing a variety of spiritual traditions. After 350, Christianity becomes the seat of transforms
Okay.
into a Catholicism. Okay. This one is a building that is not necessarily a church. It's the Pantheon. It has a Greek temple to start with, but on the back side, behind the temple, is a huge barrel vault, and it's a round structure. It's a round architecture. So you would have the barrel dome. You would have the circle. There would be a perfect circle inside this dome, and it's huge. It's 50 feet across, 50 feet tall, and you would have it would be decorated in marble on the inside, with an oculus at the very top. There was an open space up here where it's open and the sun would shine through. And again, the dome would have been made out of coffers, which would be cut out into the architecture, and it would take some of the weight off. With concrete, with the invention of concrete, they could really sculpt space. And these Pantheon, as well as other architecture, would have been created by the emperors to show off the skills of the workers and the amount of architecture that they could actually create. Are you with me on Marcus Aurelius? Can you see the sculpture?
No, we are still seeing the plan.
You're still seeing the plan?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop the slideshow because there's no point to looking at. I'll go send you the images. I'll send you individual images. Anyway, we're going to switch gears. We're going to look at how to create with color, how to work with color, the meaning of color, and then we're going to start painting. So those of you who are interested in painting for your final project, let's talk about how to develop a concept. Let's talk about how to develop an idea for your final, okay? So each of your finals is going to be obviously very, very different because you're each writing your own histories, right? Just like the emperors were trying to project their own stories into their artwork, this is now your time. The next month is devoted to you. Your story could be about where you come from. It could be about, and I'll give you some examples, but it could also be about what you're going through, what you're experiencing right now. If there is validity to creating artwork about rest, right, and about leisure, and I'll talk about that. But let's look at how to develop a concept. So for example, for me, right, I immigrated when I was 8 years old as a child from communist Czech Republic. And there was a transition of a half a year where we spent in Austria. There was a period when we immigrated where we had a week in a prison camp before they decided if we were illegal or legal, or if we were bad people or whatever. So as a child, though, going through it, I had no idea. I just knew that I was surrounded by armed guards. My father started smoking, and it was this, but as a child, we played with my sister. We had a little rubber ball and we played, and it was fine. We got through the process, we got through the 4 months, and then we flew over to the United States. In any case, for me, that experience of immigration and an experience of leaving my homeland, which is what I knew as a child, was a contradiction. When I was flying over in the airplane for the first time, I was thinking about the US in terms of maybe I'll land and there'll be Native Americans, or maybe I'll land and there'll be skyscrapers. And in Boston, there were the skyscrapers. But this idea of immigration and having boundaries to the landscape on one planet was a strange concept for me. I was thinking about what made one land one thing and what made land another thing, and how come someone has a book and can go somewhere and someone who doesn't have a book, right, the passport, can't migrate or can't go. So when immigration policy under Trump, the zero tolerance policy of separating the children, it was really difficult for me to try to understand why families at the border were being separated. Certainly it's a hard experience, I think, enough to, it was enough of a shock to immigrate. And then on top of that, to imagine that I would have been separated with my family, that would have been a very hard experience. So when you're thinking about your concept, think about your own history and your own story, okay? And then think about what material you want to be using. You can collect material that is around the house. I sometimes take cereal boxes that are cardboard and just paint them white to start, and then I can turn it into a painting as I go on top. So it doesn't have to be expensive material. You don't have to get canvas. Certainly if you want canvas, I will put ideas about what materials to get if you want to explore color painting specifically. But you can also do a drawing. You can do a carving, just like we talked about in terms of the soap. You can do painting on stones. The material and what you choose to do is up to you. Just make sure it connects to your story, okay? I'm gonna go to making skin tone, because in the US, we seem to be stuck on the superficial skin level. But we're going to make a variety of skin tones. And what's interesting about the color is that you need 6 basic colors to create 90% of colors that you will need or that you will use, okay? So you just need 6, you need your primaries. I have a yellow, I have a red, and for skin tone, you need white and black, and you also need blue, okay? So I have my 3 primaries over here. For the primary colors, so here's a middle ochre. It's like a yellow brown. It's not a pure yellow like that. It has a little bit of the other colors in it, okay? So it looks like a very, very light brown. Can you see my palette?
Yes.
Okay, good. I take that ochre. I have a palette knife, and again, this is just plexiglass or glass as a surface. It's a nice surface to work on if you want to try painting. And then to get the color lighter, if I am going for lighter skin, you can add white. For darker skin, you take that ochre and you add black. The black is going to get you a shade of green. It's a very, the ochre and the black are going to mix together to make a dark green, and it's nice where there's shadow on a face. Then you can have this kind of skin. You can also, in combination to the greens, we can use a complementary color with the red, and again, adding a little bit of white. When you're mixing with color, I wipe it off so that I don't dirty my colors. Adding light and adding shade. And this gives you a really nice transition from light to dark. You can also take these and mix them together to make an orange-brown skin tone. And what you want in painting is you want a variety of colors from light to dark, even before you start painting. You want to take your darks and mix a little bit darker, but because they're already so dark, you can also mix them with some of the lighter colors to make a variety of brown. So you want colors that are from light to dark. The light colors will be highlights where you're going to have light hitting a form, hitting a face. So for example, I'm looking at the image of Olusegun. Those of you who want to be painted right now, you can turn your screens on. We're going to do a painting of you. I'm going to turn this face from the colors that I have into Olashikun. So when we look at, or if you want to have your screen on, okay. So we're going to take, see how there's highlights. Here we go. And Georgina, awesome. Perfect. Okay. So we're going to take, I'm going to take my brushes, a little bit of oil. And we're going to get to painting. All right. So looking at skin tone, we want to mix a nice batch of a lot of the skin tone, different colors, light, medium, dark, so that you have a variety. All right. And you can start with thinking about and I find it interesting when I was learning how to paint. I was living in New York with a bunch of painters, and I would go and I would watch how they were painting, how they were putting on the color. So I have a face that is made up of just light, medium, dark, and now I want to start putting color in it. So you want to think about the darkest parts of the face are, again, remember how we were drawing, the parts that go in are going to have a layer of shade. So certainly around the eye sockets, there's going to be shade. Certainly underneath the nose is going to be a bit of shade, right? You're going to think about the mouth section also is going to be relatively dark, as well as the hair. So you want to mix a bunch of color to make sure that you have enough to spread around the dark, all right? You have enough paint to get on that surface. The color is flexible. If you go and overlap, right, oil paint, like pencil or like charcoal, is erasable. You can take, for example, Q-tips. And that color, when you need to edit or you need to edit a section of it, you can take and you can make the mouth a little bit pointier, clean up the eye a little bit. So these are particles that will blend and mix, and you can certainly wipe away as much as you are putting on, all right? And then I want to think about skin tone, and I want to mix a variety of it. I want to have, so for example, when I'm looking at Georgina's face, I have a beautiful ochre on the forehead because it's a light that's shining on there. You have a little bit of ochre on the cheeks, on the top of the nose, on the top of the lip, okay? So you want to mix yourself an ochre color. You can again mix ochre and red. There's some sections of the face that are also have a little bit of red. So again, if you look at Georgina, you have the ochre turning a little bit more towards the red color and towards the browns. Around the nose, around in between, around the cheeks, right before it goes down to the chin level. Okay, so we're going to take these colors. And again, you don't have to don't feel like you have to paint faces. You certainly don't. If you like natural materials, you can paint flowers. You can paint whatever makes you happy, whatever makes you, and it doesn't have to be just about happiness. If there's hard times, there's many paintings like Van Gogh's Starry Night, right? That's made because he was lonely. He made that painting of Starry Night because he was imagining the city underneath him. He was at that point institutionalized. So painting does not have to reflect just sort of happiness unless you want it to, right? It depends on you. So again, we're going to be adding the lights, and these layers will start building up. I'm going to add the lights of the nose, the light on this cheekbone. And what's of course interesting what other students have found interesting in the past is that of course we all are created out of the same skin tones except as shades of light and dark. So same color, and then a difference in light and dark is what just adds to the difference, okay? Of course we are, because the colors and the primary color that goes around from the sun to make the wavelengths the wavelengths hit our form the same way. We just have different skin tones because of the different shade of the sun where we were born. Skin tones are so beautiful to experiment with. If If you add a little blue to a skin tone, it's going to go darker. Georgina, if you cover your face, I can't paint you. There we go. Thank you. You're a model for today. And we can actually model for each other. And you want to go around the form and around the face, almost as if you were, with your child or with your family member. If you go in the direction, imagine if you're petting them. So my brush goes in the direction of almost going around the form, because that will give you an illusion. Again, on a flat surface, it's a hard thing to paint a picture of something that is represented in 3 dimensions. But if you follow the form and the curvature of the form around the eyes, so imagine touching that form, imagine touching that face, and how you would do that, how you would sort of pet your child, sort of going around, and that will give the illusion that it's following, that your brush is following the brush stroke that you're painting. Okay. All right. So your job today and for the next week through Thanksgiving is going to be to start thinking about what is it that you want to say with your artwork? What do you want to create, right? Because this artwork is now going to exist in the world. And whether you are speaking to people, you're making the painting or a picture or whatever for your family, that's one thing. If you're making it for the US right now, if you're making it for an alien race 10,000 years into the future, what would you say about this moment? What is the most important thing to you right now, right? That's what you want to put into the message of the artwork, okay? So first start with that. Start with the core of what you want to say, and then let's talk about what materials you want to say that in. Those of you who want to create an academic paper, you have an option. You can either do the art project or the paper, okay? Not both. You're not doing both. All right. So let me actually move out of the space because my husband is phone. Let's talk about questions. Anyone have questions for their final project?
For me, I mean, the painting is the colors. Missing the colors is my problem. So if I decided to do an artwork, I will be more safer with the pencil than to paint and than to use the painting. I might try it, but it might look messy. But
So I think trying is a great idea. And if you want to, you can take a step. If you are comfortable with doing pencil, you can go to the next step of maybe using colored pencil. And colored pencils work exactly the same way. You layer colors. It's important to know your colors. You take your paper, you layer the color on, for example, red, right, on a surface. And then if you take that and add a second layer, a complementary color to red is going to be green. So you put green, you can put green on top. And then the color will change. The color will actually start creating a third color in between, which is going to be brown. Why is it that everything goes brown? When you mix colors on top of each other, who has an idea about why they end up being brown? And in fact, that's why most of the world is brown and gray around us. Any guesses as to why all the colors when mixed together go to brown? You have all 3 wavelengths, right, mixing together. And when they mix together, they will blend together. That's why the earth, the soil is brown. You have all 3 wavelengths because from the sun, you have light coming as in terms of a wavelength, much like radio waves, like sound and color are very, very related. You have the lights coming into the ground. There's a mix of some sort, and suddenly to our eye, it seems brown. And gray is just a cooled down version of brown. If you add white and blue to brown, you will get gray, okay? So again, it's that all those mixtures are creating browns and grays around the world. Then from the ground, you have like green grass sprouting up, which means that the grass is taking some nutrients, and to our eye, it's absorbing the blue and red wavelength, so perhaps using it. And then to our eye, the grass appears green. what it really, I mean, color is fascinating. We'll talk a little bit more about color and see a short video on color on Monday. But color is fascinating in the way that it works. And it's something that needs more study. You're not the only one. Georgina, we stopped talking and studying color when we were in kindergarten, right? After we have
Yeah.
our crayons, somehow it falls out of the educational system, even though it's all around us. And it's strange that we don't analyze science. It's to do with chemistry, it's to do with physics, and we still don't really have a handle on mixing colors, how they mix, how come a tiny, when you're mixing color like this on a palette with oils, a tiny amount of color, tiniest amount, is going to take that color into another color. It's all one thing, except it's changing temperatures. And you have to sort of catch it in that in between before you add too much. For example, if you add a little bit too much blue, suddenly the whole thing's going to go black, right? So you have to be very careful about how much color you put in, because a tiny amount will have huge effects. But I think specifically for you and other people actually in the class, if you're interested, don't be afraid of paint. Oil paints are messy, but if you can, have a rag around, it's a worthwhile. And for example, with the tubes that I have, I think I've had them for about 20 years. So if you invest in 6 colors, 2 yellows, 2 reds, 2 blues, a black and a white, they will last you for 10 years. Okay, they really last a long time. And they're just incredible to work with, especially during winter when things get gray and you want to see some color and there is none because it's not spring yet. It's great to take that palette out. For children, if you have children around, you can also get water-based oil paints. So you don't have to do, around kids, just be mindful because most paints are in fact toxic. Okay, so just be very, very careful around the baby. But I think a lot of you would enjoy the experience of painting, and certainly mixing colors is just it's just such a joy to do that. It's a nice investment if you put it on your Christmas list or whatever, or don't put it on your Christmas list. We're trying to get supplies through Roxbury Community College because they should be providing with you with the materials. But it's a simple setup. Really, it's I think a glass frame that I put some tape around so that it wouldn't be sharp, and then a little bit of color. Okay.
Yeah.
Lushigan, you're muted, so I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself because I'm sorry. There we go.
Okay. Is it possible to just master that? Okay, if I want to get orange, is red and white. If I want to get something like green, is black and blue. Is it possible to just master it that way to be a fast way? Because I use colored pencil and it's very, very difficult for me to, to come up the way you mix the water colors.
Yeah. So with watercolors, it's the same thing, but again, you have to think about what you have to know your colors. So I would take first to know your colors to make a color wheel. Let's look at the color wheel together. Color is phenomenal to explore, but it does take some practice to really understand how you mix those particular colors. Let me share my screen and just make sure that you can see the screen because we've had some problems. Okay, so when you're talking about color, you will have the 3 primary colors. In paint, in light, the primary colors are, disregard the eBay ad. The primary colors that you have in wavelengths is green, red, and blue. But in paint, it's going to be yellow, green, and red. Okay, those are your 3 primary colors. When you make, I'm sorry, yellow, blue, and red. Can you see it?
You said red, green.
I'm sorry, red, blue. Yellow, and blue. Right. Red, green, and blue are wavelengths from the sun. For paint, the green changes to yellow. Okay, so you have yellow, red, and blue are your 3 primary colors. When you mix yellow and blue, you get green. When you mix red and yellow, you get orange. And when you mix your reds with blues, you get your purples. So we call the three first colors are the primary colors. They're yellow, red, and blue. The secondary colors are your green, orange, and purple. And now with those combinations, with orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and red, you can create tertiary colors, the third colors, which are going to be your browns and your grays, which are beautiful if they're mixed. And to make those, you take the opposites. You take, for example, the complement of red is green. It's the opposite side. It's the colors that are left out. So for the green color that is made up of yellow and blue, the complement is the red color. And when you mix those two colors, the green and the red, you have a beautiful variety of grays and greens, okay? And again, if you mix all three colors together, you will get brown, okay? So that's something, and when you're doing your color wheel, you actually could, if you're interested in exploring color, I would recommend making a color wheel for yourself so that you know how to mix colors properly, so that you get the colors that you want and it's not a surprise. Sometimes when you mix red and blue, it comes out brown instead of purple, for example. And there's a question, why did that
Is there
happen?
any website? Hello,
We can-
is there any website we can go to learn how to mix and get results?
Go to
yeah,
YouTube.
Like
Go to YouTube. You'll get everything there.
you can go,
Okay.
we can certainly mix, and I can show you some more mixings so that you know, and it gets, but it's the more you do it, the more you will know what those colors are. But there are
I
plenty.
understand.
There's plenty of I'll try to find and do some research about color mixing and send you some videos about how to mix proper colors that will give you some results, because sometimes it's frustrating when you're expecting purple to come and instead you get a brown. But that's because the red and the blue, and I've had it 100 times, of course, because I've done it 100 times. If the red has a little yellow in it and it's warm, and if it has a little bit of blue, the blue has a little bit of yellow in it too, then those two will of course make brown, because the yellow is in, even though it seems to our eye like it's red and blue, it has that yellow in it and it'll turn it into brown. But color is fascinating stuff. You can of course also paint in acrylics, watercolors, colored pencils, anything that you have around in color will work. Crayons. If you layer crayons on top of each other, you'll get the same kind of mixing. So you don't have to also go to the store and buy all the colors of the rainbow. You will in fact be able to create that from just yellow, red, and blue. Okay, and I think
Okay.
last class we went over the cool and warms, but I can do that again. Okay, so you are working on quiz 3 that will be due on Monday the 23rd, right? And that was from the slideshow, thankfully, from Monday, so that you have the whole slideshow there. I'm sorry today's slideshow didn't work. I'm not sure what was going on with Zoom and why it in fact didn't work. But you can certainly read about the artwork, and the slides will be in that book that that you have a link to. But you will not have questions for the quiz from Rome 2. You're only focusing on Rome 1 for the quiz. All right. And start thinking about your final projects. If you have any questions about that, stay a little bit longer right now and we can have a discussion about the final project. Any questions?
Teacher,
Yes, Edelyn.
for the quiz 3,
Yes.
did you put it already? Because I was looking at it and I can't find it.
So the quiz 3 is not in, I noticed that as well. It's only in it's not in coursework. It's actually in week 9. So I will put it into the coursework and today. Okay.
Oh,
So when you go to the overview, you can
Mhm.
get the quiz over here when you go to the bottom. It's not in grades yet, but here it is over here. And it's again the same. If you open it up, it's a Word document. So you can open it here and fill it out and email it back to me. But I'll put it in coursework today when I'm done with the class. Okay. So
Okay.
it will be in there. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Very welcome. On Monday, I would like to at least hear about what you want to create, or if you're going to do the paper. Okay, so I want to hear from everybody to see what project they're interested in doing, and then we can start thinking about it, how to accomplish that project. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Have a great weekend. Take some rest. Be well. Don't get sick.
Bye, Professor.
And,
Thank you so
and
Thank
much.
you
take care
so
of family
much.
and babies,
Thank
okay?
Thank
you.
you.
All right. Bye.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Be well.
Bye.
Bye.
Amy, everything going okay with you? How are you doing?
Yes.
Everything good?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. Work with the kids is good?
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, we're still managing. Trying to figure out space. That's really difficult right this time. So,
Okay. Space
but
for what?
now yeah, for the kids with our remote. Yeah. Yeah. But we're doing good.
It's hard. It's hard to have everybody have enough space to do their work, and especially also for you, right? For schoolwork too, to get. Are you taking more than this course, or are you taking one course at a time?
I'm taking 3. I'm taking Spanish 2 and community organizing.
Okay, those are excellent. But that's a lot of work for you on top of having the kids, and then are you still working? Are you still going to work, or are you remote?
Well, we've been put on hold. There are restrictions now. Yeah,
What does that
because of
mean?
the funding's coming from a certain place. They have now us doing a whole different protocol.
Okay.
We have to, the space has to be inspected. We have to do stories on top of Corey's
Mhm,
for staff.
mhm.
And yeah, I know the executive director, she's not happy with the switch. And she's been kind of putting on hold on getting the program going. I understand she doesn't want to change our culture, because
Yeah.
we had these scholars in our program for years, and now we have to kind of change things for them. So whether it be their regular teachers because they don't qualify for or they have to be licensed now and everything. So
But
yeah.
is it for is it for safety protocol that they're following to make sure that
Well,
everybody stays safe?
Yeah, I guess this is what the safety protocol is under their watch. But we've been managing for 6 years, and we've been very successful. I think now, it is a different light. The atmosphere, the energy is weird right now, and everybody's a little
On edge.
on edge. Yeah. So I can say for the 6